Hi, my name is Chase, and today I'm going to be talking about Charles W. Chesnutt and his work, The Future American. Chesnutt was an African American, and he was born of free black parents. He was born June 20th, 1858, and he died November 15th, 1932. The significance of his birth date is that he was born just previous to the Civil War. And he grew up mostly in North Carolina, and that's where he spent most of his childhood and adult life. So he experienced, because of the time frame in which he lived and his geological location, a lot of racial prejudice. And in his writings, this comes out very prevalently. The Future American was a three-part article written by Chesnutt in 1900. And the part that I have read is part 3 of that article. And it's significant that it was written in 1900 because this is the turn of the century, and a lot of this time period is consumed with Jim Crow laws and very high racial segregation, especially in the South and Southern states, such as North Carolina, where Chesnutt lived. Chesnutt's overall hypothesis in these pieces is that over time, over a vast expanse of time, the future American ethnicity will consist of a fusion between all of the various races that now currently reside in this continent. Chesnutt goes about trying to prove this hypothesis of a unique and whole fusion of all races, first by pointing out the restrictions that would keep this from happening. The restrictions that Chesnutt goes into as to why the African American people wouldn't be able to be fused into the American population as a whole have a lot to do with prejudice, and prejudice specifically against Black people. Now, this prejudice can be manifested in many different ways, and Chesnutt talks about a few of those ways in this passage. One is specifically, he says, Southern laws prohibit interracial marriages, and interracial marriages are crucial for any mixing of the races to go on, because that's just how you create a race that is mixed through interracial marriages. And many people were afraid to do this. Any African American man who married a white woman would most likely be killed for that marriage. And he also goes into the industrial and social efficiency difference between the two, the whites and the blacks. And a lot of this is just on a subconscious level, but a lot of it isn't. African Americans are of a industrial and social lower class, and this isn't their fault, but it is the case in large part. And white people see themselves and their culture as being prestigious and something of achievement. So no white person with a pride in their race is going to deface themselves and marry someone of a lower and insufficient class. After having discussed the restrictions of the African American race being fused into the American population, Chesnutt now dives into what would inhibit this fusion of the races, what would make it happen. And he does this through two different means. The first mean that Chesnutt goes into is a hypothetical, where the segregation laws that split whites from blacks are still in place and that they do not get removed. Now, in this hypothetical, if white people have all of the rights that they deserve and Black people do not, then Black people are automatically going to be seeking out white people to marry. The purpose of this would be so that their children could be more white. And over time, if this process continues through generations, then children will become more and more white. So this hypothetical is proving Chesnutt's hypothesis that the races are going to mix, because they are mixing, though they are mixing in a way that is going to directly make the race as a whole a lighter colored race. The second situation, and the one that is much more preferred by Chesnutt for the intermixing of the race, is that one where there are no more laws that prohibit whites and blacks from being together or being equal, and that over time and through work, African Americans show their worth. So in the free markets of America, they're benefiting society, and through their culture and everything that is unique to an African American society, that those things are seen as valuable to white people. And eventually this stigma that white culture is dominant or better than black culture will disappear. And instead, Americans as a whole will begin to see the best things from white culture and the best things from black culture, and they'll want those things mixed. And as a result, the stigma between white and black marriage will disappear also. So with that culture comes the physical marriage. And in this sense, the races would still be mixing and proving Chesnutt's hypothesis. The significance of everything that Chesnutt has been saying is that the country is at war. It's at war between whites and blacks purely based on the color of their skin. And he has also shown that no matter what happens, the races are eventually going to become one and the same. So this can happen through a forceful adaptation to survive, which would create contempt among a lot of the people. Or this could happen because the two races look at each other and they see good things about each other, and they want to mix, and that stigma between one race or the other is broken. That, in my opinion, is the better path.